Welcome everybody to the next installation of our webinar series. We have another exciting talk for you today, but we also have some preliminaries to try to share with you. Just as we always try to remind you, this is the address for the website where we keep posting the information and update the information about our webinar series. And the lovely arrows indicate where you can find the links to the YouTube recordings of previous sessions, and in some cases the slideshows that our contributors have made available to us. On that website also is a place where you can still sign up for our mailing list. We do send reminders and announcements of the upcoming speakers, and as we may be winding down the series, we'll be sure to let people know if we go on hiatus and what our future plans are via the mailing list as well. We do ask that people do take a survey to give us some feedback about the series so far and help us plan for the future. And we're going to be asking you some of those questions today, but we can't ask you all the open-ended questions. So we would be grateful if you would help us with that and take the full survey. I'm now going to ask you, all of you who are joining us as audience members today, if you would please help us with just a few closed-ended survey questions to help us gauge how we are doing. The first question should be up, and this just asks for you to click to describe who you are in our audience, what your affiliation and orientation is. And I think that you should probably be able to scroll through this poll. And I don't want to disrupt the speakers, but it should not take more than a couple of minutes. I'm going to go quiet and ask you to spend a couple minutes going through that poll as I advance to the next slide so we can all look at some better pictures. This is background information. It won't disrupt your poll taking. That is that we are running a Q&A facility in the Zoom webinar software. If you have a question for our speakers today, please write it into that Q&A utility in the Zoom system. We'll keep an eye out for those questions. We like to hold the questions for the end of the session. Sometimes we run out of time, but we'll do our best to get to your questions and route them to our speakers. I think if you are still taking the poll, you should be able to do that. I don't want to cause you any distraction, but I would like to keep things moving along and say that we're very grateful and excited to have three speakers in kind of a roundtable today, talking about the crisis effects on business and journalism in Santa Barbara. Our first speaker is Bill Macfadyen. He's the founder and publisher of NewsHawk, Santa Barbara County's top source professional breaking local news 24/7. And Bill's focus on this is that he's been trying to keep a virtual news organization up and running, and all of a sudden with the COVID virus, they've had to go into overdrive to keep us informed and to compete in the local media landscape. So we're very excited to hear his views. Our second speaker is Kristen Miller, who was the director of the Goleta Chamber of Commerce for a long time, helped that organization merge with Santa Barbara's Chamber of Commerce. It was one big organization representing more than 1,000 businesses, 1,000 business members and 45,000 local jobs. And Kristen will be here to talk about impacts in the local business community. We'll also be joined by Chris Chiarapa. He's a local restaurateur, partner of Mesa Burger. He just joined opened a new enterprise, Corner Tap, a couple of weeks ago. I'm fascinated to hear how the timing of opening a new business in the middle of reopening and some instability in marketing and restaurant business, how brave or crazy that was, but I'm sure his insights will be very useful. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, invite you to finish the poll, and turn things over to Bill. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm a big fan of UCSB and Novum, especially, and Cottage Health, which is one of our longtime partners. And it's an honor to be included in this series, so thank you. As Joe mentioned, I'm the founder and publisher of NewsHawk, which was launched in 2007 to fill the void of local news in Santa Barbara and Goleta. Over our first 5 years, readership and revenue were growing steadily, albeit very, very slowly. But in 2012, we executed NewsHawk 2.0, which is when I fired myself as executive editor and sales manager and took on two equity partners, two professionals, I should add, to fill those roles. We raised a little bit of outside investment, and that enabled us to grow our news staff and our sales staff. And since then, uh, 23,000 readers a day, making NewsHawk the #1 source of daily local news in Santa Barbara County. And at the height of the COVID-19 chaos, we averaged 33,000 daily readers. Our audience reads 1.5 million stories a month on NewsHawk, and that figure rose to more than 2 million a month in March, April, and May. Our success has not gone unnoticed nationally. Google approached us a couple of years ago with a very tempting partnership proposal, although we ultimately declined after a very long time in negotiations. The exercise got us thinking about news deserts, and being entrepreneurs, we came up with a plan of our own, which leads me to NewsHawk 3.0. Based on those discussions, last year we decided to pursue a direct public offering for our company. A DPO, for those of you who don't know, and frankly, not that many people do know what a DPO is. It's essentially high-level crowdfunding, overseen by the state of California, in which even non-accredited investors can purchase non-equity, non-voting shares in our company. We've always been very close with Berkeley Side, which is the NewsHawk of Berkeley, which 2 years ago pulled off a successful DPO, and that was the first of its kind in the realm of local news. And we're basically following their playbook. Unlike other investments, which must be used for the benefit of the shareholders, DPO funds are used for the benefit of shareholders and the community, i.e. the greater good. So in other words, NewsHawk is the greater good, what we're doing in the community, what we proved to be doing in the community, and we believe that's a compelling attraction for investors. But there are complications with that. For a number of reasons, to raise that money, we had to dissolve our LLC and establish a B Corp, a benefit corporation, in its stead, which seemed really, pretty easy to do. But of course, we timed the conversion around January 1st for tax purposes, and we anticipated state approval of the project in about February. And that did happen. But our capital campaign was to start taking place in Q2 and Q3, and we hope to begin implementing the results in the fourth quarter. Those funds are going to be invested in talent, technology, and reserves. The short-term goal for us is to reverse Santa Barbara County news deserts, whether they're geographic or by subject matter, and there frankly are a lot of news deserts in Santa Barbara County. Areas and topics that are simply not being covered by anybody. And then the long-term objective is to position NewsHawk so it will survive and thrive after we three partners ride off into the sunset. Not that I'm leaving anytime soon. And then came the coronavirus. So NewsHawk is known for breaking news, and we do drama and inconvenience better than anyone. Our team is battle-tested, but we're also passionate and productive. We were up for the challenge, even after the COVID-19 crisis turned into a marathon and not a sprint. But this pandemic is like a Pandora's box of problems. It has health, economic, social, political, and even cultural impacts and consequences that will be with us for years. So what do we do? First, we had to take care of our employees. We reinforced their decision-making on how best to cover their assignments safely. Fortunately, ours is virtually a virtual office anyway, so our teams are used to working independently from home or wherever, and we already were heavy Zoom users. Next, we delayed the DPO until 2021. Obviously, it's like a capital campaign. There's a lot of face-to-face time with potential investors, and none of that was going to happen in 2020. So we put that off. But we also embraced our advertisers and sponsors while bracing for an expected cratering of our revenue streams, especially from nonprofit organizations, which is a large part of our business plan. At the same time, we implemented several innovations to draw in new business and help our clients strengthen their messaging. Instead of losing revenue, I'm proud to say that we gained it, and so far have been markedly outperforming our original 2020 budget. That's great. We hope that continues, but you never know. We also moved up our spring Hawks Club membership campaign, and took our own advice and retooled that message. The reader response to that was spectacular. That was in late March. And in just a couple of weeks, we brought in almost 2 months of reserves, which has helped tremendously. At the same time, we also secured a PPP loan, which has given us some peace of mind, especially as we head into the summer, which historically has been a downtime for news advertising anyway. But even with the DPO postponed, we decided we needed more hawks in the nest, and we needed them now. Our news team has paced itself, but adrenaline eventually runs out, and the demands on our sales team have jumped tremendously. I'm really pleased to say that brand new UCSB alumna Jade Martinez Polk, who was a very talented reporter with the Bottom Line newspaper, started with us yesterday. And we're excited to have her on our team. And we're interviewing for a new sales and marketing position with hopes of hiring in mid-July. And then we expect to have a Hawks Club membership coordinator in place by the end of next month. With the belief that in-person meetings and events won't be returning for some time, we also see new opportunities with webcasts and webinars like what you all are doing. And we're actively exploring those and putting together a pretty comprehensive plan that I'm personally very excited about. I really think that's going to be a big part of our operation moving forward. And of course, we always bite off more than we can chew. And so if all that isn't enough to do, sometime this summer, God knows when, we'll be migrating NewsHawk to a new content management platform as part of NewsPack, which is an initiative of WordPress, Google, and some national journalism foundations. And they really wanted NewsHawk to be a part of this experiment because of the size of our database and the reputation that we have. And they felt if they could successfully incorporate a organization as complex as ours, that would be a really good selling point for their project. So we're excited to have that opportunity, although we dread anytime you're talking about migrating your website to another, there's all sorts of challenges. And then another thing that I think especially this group would be really interested in, assuming high school sports returns in the fall, we'll be resuming an experiment that we started in the spring with artificial intelligence that unfortunately was cut off when high school or spring sports were canceled. So that's a whole interesting topic. But a lot of this is personal, as you all know, and I'm not looking for sympathy, but a journalist's job can be harsh and unyielding. We tell stories of triumph, of course, but we often see people at their worst, when they're the most vulnerable and most exposed, when their hopes have been torn from them and crushed before their eyes. And it takes a toll. Our readers trust NewsHawk, and especially at a time like this, they look to us to be a constant in their lives. And as publisher, I am NewsHawk. I may have to worry about how to keep my own company in business, but our readers and our advertisers and our business partners, they want to share and they need to share their stories with me, and I owe it to them to listen. It's improved a lot over the last 3 to 4 weeks, but for almost 3 months, I was hearing heartbreaking stories of woe day after day after day. Lost jobs, lost savings, missed house payments, suicides, businesses closing, health concerns, postponed cancer checkups, no daycare, no guidance for homeschooling, pets going without life-saving treatments, Families of Lompoc prison inmates frantically trying to get information about their sons, husbands, fathers, and brothers. I would listen to these stories and I would hear the desperation in their voices and I could feel their fear, and there literally was nothing I could do. That's really harsh. But I could use my platform to speak for them, and so I did. In my weekly column, I relentlessly pointed out that the COVID-19 pandemic was two-sided, that the health crisis could not be decoupled from the self-inflicted economic catastrophe that we created as a country pretty much willingly. All of us made those choices, and I believe that that was the right choice. But it's important to remember that there can be no lasting success for one of those crises without the other. Although there have been positive developments like the CARES Act, which has been crucial for small business, for the most part, warnings from myself and others went unheeded, and we're left with the illogical, contradictory, and unfair reopening plan that we have, along with a much greater mistrust all the way around. Sadly, to this day, I'm not sure that most government and public health officials fully understand how myopic and frankly dangerous their choice was for the coronavirus, for our community, for our country, and for our future. But I'll end with this. I was right. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions later if we have time, but I'm told that I'm supposed to introduce Kristen Miller, which I'm very pleased to do. She's the president and CEO of the merging Santa Barbara and Goleta Chambers of Commerce. And she has been a tireless leader in the business community's response to all that has been going on with COVID-19. And I'm proud to have had the opportunity to work alongside her on many of these initiatives. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kristen. Thank you. Kristen, it looks like you're muted.
Let's see if you can hear me now. Okay. I really appreciate your remarks. I kind of hate to follow up with a list of mundane things that I'm going to go through, because you have summed up so well, really the effects of what we're all going through. We appreciate your words and your contribution on that. I am, though, happy to be here today to give an update from the business community, and I'm also glad that I'll be welcoming board member and businessman Chris Sharapa to help share information about the restaurant industry and local economy. I'm going to speak first about the business community as a whole and then turn it over to him to touch on the restaurant industry. So let me see if I can share my screen here and turn it into presentation mode if I know how to do this. Here we go. As Bill said, I'm Kristen Miller, and I've been for 18 years the president and CEO of the Goleta Chamber of Commerce, representing 450 businesses and 35,000 jobs in the region. But as of a few weeks ago, we did announce that I'll have the honor of working with our neighbors at the Santa Barbara Chamber of Commerce in a merged organization. The expectation is that the new group will represent more than 1,000 members, many more jobs, and that becomes effective on July 1st. The economic impact of COVID-19 on our local economy and jobs cannot be overstated. We're acutely aware of it on every level of business, from retail to manufacturing to healthcare to visitor services to education and certainly to government. While the level of this crisis is astounding, I'm equally amazed at the level of response. Our business community in Southern California is known for innovation and ingenuity, and I'm proud to say the way our businesses have pivoted on a dime makes me proud to be their representative. Likewise, I've never seen the swift and nimble response of government at this level before. From the Federal CARES Act to the closing of State Street, every level of government has adapted, and quickly. Great efforts have been made by the Chamber and government to support one of the hardest hit sectors of the local economy, restaurants. The reasons for this are important. Restaurants are where we gather, where we experience community, where we nourish ourselves, our families, and often our clubs, associations, and groups. Across the region, and especially in Goleta, the loss of a handful of restaurants, say even if 5 went under, and a coffee shop with real vibe, that would have a lasting negative effect on our much esteemed quality of life. So much of what you have seen with relentless promotion of restaurants to the public, making public policy changes to support outdoor dining, tax abatements, PPP loans have all been supported to help the food and beverage industry during this unprecedented time. The tourism industry, including lodging, recreation, museums, attractions, are also among the hardest hit. Hotel occupancy and revenue has never been this low in the history of record keeping for hotels. There's not much we've been able to do for this industry. We promoted day use of hotel rooms for remote workers. We advocated to government to defer the collection of bed taxes, and we changed our promotional messages to try to keep visitors informed and connected to us. But the long-term detrimental effect on our local hotels will not be fully known for quite some time. One tool we've been using to keep informed and connected with the business community is to implement a weekly business leaders call, gathering representatives from each of the important sectors of the economy to give a short update from their corner of the crisis to their colleagues, to representatives from government, on a timely and consistent schedule. This has proved to be a useful tool, and the feedback we have is that we'll keep doing this and keep evolving it for the foreseeable future. And we were able to convene a similar group county-wide. CEOs from each Chamber of Commerce in the county now gather weekly instead of monthly to share best practices, emerging trends, new information, and that ever so important regional perspective. What we learned through both of these groups is that businesses in our county are doing an amazing job of innovating during a time of crisis. Manufacturers are keeping lines open while distancing employees and using sanitation. Retail changed curbside pickup into a fun new normal. Restaurants adapted to creative strategies that keep safe distance and keep their customers' confidence in their practices. Software companies learn to work from home. Banks have modified within strict guidelines to somehow become even more customer friendly. And some of our favorite gathering spots like local brew pubs and even the zoo have found a way to stay in our hearts through Zoom, GoToMeeting, and Facebook Live. I'm not minimizing the fact that many, many businesses have closed. Healthcare workers are either overworked or can't work at all, and that we customers suffered too long from home haircuts and new levels of loneliness. But I do want to recognize that we adapt quickly and creatively, and many of our businesses have invented new ways to keep going. Going from that big picture to some very tactical work, we found ourselves in a unique position to purchase 20,000 paper masks. We found that we could tap into the supply chain for masks that were being provided for our high-tech clean rooms and procure them pretty quickly. We calculated a formula of how many retail establishments were open, estimated their number of employees, and decided on a number of masks that we thought we could provide coverage for a few weeks. We did this just in Goleta and just to businesses. We narrowed it to just these audiences because we felt it was an audience we could support safely, and these are the members and businesses who know us and were already connected to the Chamber. A vital piece of the puzzle in this crisis has been the Federal CARES Act. The national relief funding, and particularly the small business funds, have been the necessary lifeline to our businesses locally. It is by far the quickest, largest, most comprehensive business relief package we've ever seen. We didn't see anything like this during the Great Recession. And it may not be perfect, but it continues to be the first line of defense for most businesses, and the fact that it goes through our local community banks has been the best part. As these are our long-term community partners, they know our businesses inside and out, especially now. On another level, the County Board of Supervisors connected with REACH, an excellent economic development group, to help us connect business to government regarding the economic crisis and targeted around reopening procedures. REACH did a fast-paced, thorough, and nimble business input process that provided feedback to the county on an industry-by-industry basis. Their process brought us together and connected businesses with each other across the county, but we did that. We shared our best ideas and plans for reopening businesses in the most efficient and safe ways. Phased reopening of our economy is the most important work we're doing right now. And coordinating that with finally allowing travel again and how that affects our tourism economy is of the highest importance. Every area of our county is reliant on tourism in some form, and most cities count on bed taxes and related tourism income as their largest source of revenue. Most of them also invest in their local tourism business through their Chamber of Commerce, their Tourism Business Improvement District, or Conference and Visitors Bureau. The city of Santa Barbara has certainly been a shining example of doing this well. And so while this industry cluster is facing the most devastating economic crisis of our lifetimes, our municipalities will suffer that financial loss as well. Another important factor that we are facing is right now, maybe we're just past it, the deciding moment about so many of our summertime community events, including 4th of July fireworks, all of these shows being canceled. These are activities that have traditionally brought us together in festive celebrations, and they're all being either redesigned into virtual format or they're having to be canceled altogether. The economic impact of this will affect many hotels, nonprofit organizations, and clubs to come. So looking ahead, we've relied on the UC Santa Barbara Economic Forecast for more than 2 decades to give us our best information possible on projections when it comes to the local economy. I don't have those forecast numbers, but I do gather information from leaders in a variety of industries at all times. We feel that the new normal will and should be very different than what we had before. As we look toward the recovery stage, our rallying cry may be to work far more closely together. Less silos, more connection. Our chamber merger may not be the last. Organizations can and will be uniting to pool resources and brainpower and community action to truly come together as we pull through this economic crisis. Retail, restaurants, and commercial real estate will surely evolve and change for the future. There can be a win-win when we combine uses into one site, like the Funk Zone and Public Market as examples. When we modernize our downtowns to be more habitable environments. When we allow more workers to telecommute and we have access to healthcare in the palm of our hands on a smartphone. We are smart, innovative, compassionate people, and we have learned more than ever that we thrive in our tribes. We need that human connection, and we miss gathering together. So as recovery comes, we want to use that collaborative spirit to keep making the necessary changes that allow our new normal to be better than it's ever been. So with that, let's see. I get to introduce Chris Sharapa, local restaurateur and partner of Mesa Burger, who just opened his newest concept, Corner Tap, on the Mesa 2 weeks ago. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Thank you, Kristen. Can everybody hear me okay? I've had a little technical difficulties.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear you fine, Chris. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Kristen. Great introductions and summaries. Hello, everyone. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Chris Sharapa. I'm the owner of Mesa Burger, co-owner of Mesa Burger with celebrity chef Kat Cora, and then individual owner of Lighthouse Coffee and recently a new spot on the Mesa called Corner Tap. So yeah, big shifts, big pivots in the restaurant world, really pretty tough to say the least. So COVID-19 arrives and sales take a drastic decrease in all the businesses. At that point, I should back up for a second. We have 2 Mesa Burgers, one in Caleta and one on the Mesa. And we have one Lighthouse Coffee on the Mesa. We recently opened another one on Chapala, and Corner Tap just opened a couple weeks ago. So when COVID arrived back in March, all of the businesses that we currently had open decreased in sales from 30% down to 70%. It varied with each location. So if you can imagine, you go through this incredible shift. Your sales decrease, You're faced with major layoffs and furloughs, which is very hard personally. But you still have accounts payable, meaning that you still have past due invoices and bills for all your vendors. You have landlords who have unrest about the rent, and a lot of this is happening all at once, obviously, and no one really knows the direction of it. So everybody's kind of wondering and has questions about how it's all going to go. And then you have the safety factor. Do your employees feel comfortable working? Do they need to work? Are they going to get unemployment? So there's a variety of things going on right out of the gate. Then you have to shift operationally. I'll speak specifically to Mesa Burger for the most part. We're a restaurant that was probably 75% dine-in, 25% takeout. But then you have to shift to everything being takeout and delivery. We did not have existing relationships with Grubhub, DoorDash, or Uber Eats. We only were working with Restaurant Connection at the time. So there's kind of a frantic sign up with all the delivery companies, and each delivery company has their kind of intricacies in working with each. So you have to learn that. You're getting handed all of your health department and CDC guidelines on how a restaurant should operate. So now you're on to masks, you're on to gloves, you're on to sanitizers, social distancing. So you're throwing a lot of different things at one time, as well as eating patterns are changing. So what used to be your prime eating hours, which are, we'll call it 12 to 1:30 and 6 to 7:30, we start to see a shift, and people are kind of eating more throughout the day. So you have staffing changes. You have a decreasing staffing availability with people choosing to not work, had to be laid off, etc. But then you have now food being ordered and delivered continuously throughout the day. So you're going through a lot of different shifts here. You know, and really probably of it all is the people aspect. I think someone mentioned this earlier about just the unrest of, kind of the human spirit. Business aside for a second, I'll say this was probably the most challenging for me as a leader of these businesses, is to adjust with that and what your people are going through, not only your employees, but what guests are going through as they walk in and they're uncomfortable to touch something or be close to someone. So you're dealing with a lot all at once. So then, as we follow things and the government steps in to provide what I consider wonderful support, people can be critical of it and the timing of it and the figuring out of it all. But for what the SBA did and the government with these disaster loans and PPP loans in a short amount of time, I actually applaud the efforts at the highest level. I think it's amazing what was accomplished in a short amount of time. So now you're at a point now where you have a lot of financial management going on with all the businesses and your vendors and your landlords. And then it's time to apply for your PPP loans and your EIDL loans, your disaster loans. And there's kind of a rush around that. And each bank has different protocols in place or systems in place to get you approved. So there's kind of a race to the funding, so to speak. We were fortunate enough to get both PPP funding and EIDL funding. However, we did not get our PPP funding on the first round. We were fortunate enough to get it on the second round. So that was great. So throughout this process, you're still dealing with, nationwide health department, statewide changes. You're dealing with sales going up, sales going down. I won't say competing with unemployment, but to some degree you are, especially with the additional unemployment that was being provided to people per week. For many of them, it was more than they were making when they actually were working. So there's a gentle approach of how you relay that message to your people that are no longer with you, but you want to bring them back. And so kind of painting the picture of, hey, this, the Mesa Burger train, for example, is starting to move forward. Sales are increasing. We wanted to come to you first to offer your job back, and wanted to let you know. So it's a bit of a resell as to why you should come back and work with us. So that was an interesting time, a time and a way that needed to be handled very gently, because people had valid concerns of why they weren't at work or willing to work, etc. So it's hard to take a blanket approach to that. And then you shift again, and now it's time for dine in. And then the shifting protocols with that, all the things that Kristen mentioned about parklets and extended patios, and now you're shifting back to table service and spacing within the restaurant. So it's really a series of shifts over I'll call it a 12-week period. A lot of moving parts, and I'll say this too, there were a few times that we actually, though we were considered essential businesses as owners, there was a little bit of a mental pickle that we were struggling with. Are we essential? Is it the right thing to stay open? Maybe when we were hearing that the coronavirus was going to see its peak, there were times that we had conversations with management about, is it the right thing to stay open? Is coffee a necessity? Is a hamburger a necessity? Should we not open to help reduce the number of cases, the number of interaction with people? So you're really dealing with a lot of different things. In the end, we only had to close one of our locations, our Goleta location, for about 4 weeks because of the decline in sales and traffic in the marketplace, and with the students no longer being in session. So, but we've since reopened 5 weeks ago, and sales have been great. Our sales on the Mesa for Mesa Burger, again, took a big hit in the beginning, but had since climbed to some of our best months that we had ever had in 3 years of being open. So, which was a very interesting difference between the two locations and the traffic of the two areas. So, as we've kind of gotten our stride back at all of our businesses, we've since opened our second coffee shop on Chapala over by Kanaloa Fish Market, where the former breakfast location used to be. We did open a tap room that is not only a alcohol-centric place, it does have food. So we were able to open that location 2.5 weeks ago. That's where the former Giovanni's pizza place is on the Mesa. So it's been good. And as people look to the future and unemployment guidelines are changing, we've actually been able to restaff pretty well. It's been a little bit harder in Goleta, but for the Mesa and the Chapala Lighthouse, it's been really good. And along the way, to the points that Kristen was driving home, I've been fortunate enough to participate in a lot of strategic and chamber-related calls all along the way. There's been incredible support, really, in anywhere you could look, from the banks to the chambers to different businesses, to help us all get through this. It's been a really neat rally and kind of all-in family approach that has really been extremely valuable to me. So thankful for the opportunity to talk to you all today. Thanks to those of you who have enjoyed our businesses and supported us along the way. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Those were wonderful talks, and we have a few questions that have been asked. So I'm going to ask this to all our panelists. The first is, do you feel that local businesses are getting adequate guidance from policymakers on reopening in the wake of COVID-19? So your thoughts. I'm
sorry, I had was that directed to me?
Well, you
Chris.
can start, Chris. And,
Sure.
Yeah. go ahead.
Yes, I actually feel the guidance has been, I mean, there's some figuring it out, and there's been some things that have, been one way one week and in a different way the next. We're all kind of growing together through it, but I've felt very clear guidelines on how to open. Now, the collaboration comes in, and the kind of the strategic approaches come in with who else you're visiting with and what other people are doing from a marketing standpoint, or how did they shift with their to-go containers or what have you. But yes, I have felt very supported and clear on the opening protocols.
Kristen? Bill?
Hey, Kristen, you're not, we can't hear you.
Maybe it's through the phone. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having technology today. I was just going to say, I also think that the communication flow has been better than I've ever seen. And good that it is, because this is so vitally important. But between government and business, it's been quicker and clearer. We've gotten very, it's all done by email. I get emails from the county about the new guidelines. I send them out to the businesses. And we used to kind of joke about, is email kind of become a thing of the past? Like, we're all using other platforms now. And I don't know, do you think we're really going to keep emailing? And now all of a sudden I get replies to all of my emails. So I think for the moment that has been quite helpful. And then of course you have News Talk on today to talk about how well or how not well that has been communicated. I would love to hear Bill's perspective as well.
Yeah, I gotta be a contrarian for with you and Chris. The county is definitely engaged now. Let's be clear about that. And the city of Santa Barbara, belatedly, as Kristen pointed out with State Street, belatedly, they're definitely in the game. But both organizations waited way too long. The REACH process, which was an extraordinarily fast, exhaustive, they covered so much ground in such little time, but that actually didn't get underway until early May in earnest. And keep in mind that the governor ordered the shutdown on March 19th. And between then and early May, there was very little consistent planning about how to reopen businesses and what to do. And yet, as the pandemic was showing in the data, we were, the shutdown was ordered to enable hospitals and the healthcare system to buy some time and to blunt the effects of being overwhelmed by patients. And the shutdown worked. Absolutely, it worked. We never saw those real risks materialize, especially in Santa Barbara County. But there was no plan for victory. It wasn't until later that people started to really focus on that, and so much time was lost, so many lives were disrupted, so much business was threatened, and I just don't think, overall, I would, give the effort a C. I completely agree that this is an unprecedented crisis. No one in our lifetime has confronted something like this that has had profound impacts throughout the world. God forbid that this happens again. But I feel like, business was much farther ahead of government, but government was impeding business from making the choices that they needed to make to get through this.
So Bill, I'm going to follow up. So you used the V word, you said victory. So have we reached there yet? Are you confident that we have arrived?
Okay, maybe V is not the correct word. I mean, the coronavirus is going to be with us for months, if not years. There is no vaccine for it. There's no, we're doing a much better job with testing. You guys know all this. But it's not going away. You know, we hope that it will peter out, but nobody truly knows. But we did, in fact, achieve a significant milestone when we staved off that hospitals being overrun.
Yeah.
Even in the worst, I believe in California, even in the worst areas, none of those hospitals approached catastrophic levels. And so, you know, that is a victory. We were able to do that, and that was a direct result of the shutdown. So good for us for doing that. But I'm just saying that, you know, once we achieved that and we got through that initial run, I think we took too long to focus on what comes next.
Thanks. There is one more question. This is directed at Chris. So Chris, as you were retooling your business to align with the changes due to COVID-19, were there any local resources missing from your tool set? Chris, I think you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I love Bill's opposing statement. I think I don't feel that there were any major missing tools. And part of that is probably because me personally, I did not feel a huge rush on certain things. I was trying to take a very balanced approach of health and business profitability. So for me, the pace was fine. I felt when I needed the resources to, you know, open in a takeout manner, delivery, and then eventually a dine-in manner. For me and our businesses, and each business is unique, right? So that's something that everybody should keep in mind. What Mesa Burger needs is very different than what the Lark needs, and which is different than what In-N-Out Burger needs, right? So I think, you know, you might get a couple different answers to the question from different, you know, businesses, not only just food. So for me, I felt supported. I also took it upon myself to attend a lot of webinars from outside the state of California, maybe with some other states that were a little bit ahead of us. I would sit in on some restaurant related protocols and webinars from people much more seasoned than I. So I would get a little tidbits of or pearls, if you will. So when it came time for California to take its next steps forward, I felt somewhat in tune with it as best I could.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the other question that I have is, what will be the new normal? So for each one of you, you are in a different sector of business. When things return back to normal, let's say we find a vaccine, let's say it happens in the next 12 months. Do you think there'll be any changes or would we just forget everything? I mean, how do you expect the future to unfold? Bill?
No, I don't even know that we know what the new normal is going to be. You know, it is amazing how we've, you know, just the whole Zoom platform has become such a, you know, unmistakable part of our lives now. So I don't even know that we can foresee that. But yeah, I think the work from home situation has forced I mean, News Hawk was always like that. We have an office, but we've been always mostly virtual. But I think other companies that traditionally have not figured to do, you know, have not ventured into that space are now rethinking that, which is a good thing. But, you know, a lot of our economy depends on businesses that can't work from home. You know, our service industry, they have to be at restaurants. You can't cook at home and then deliver that somewhere else. You know, gardeners, landscapers, work crews, all that kind of stuff on the streets. So I think there will be long-term effects that we don't even know about yet. But I think for the most part, Americans are resilient, and we figure things out. We're entrepreneurial, and I'm excited about where that goes. The California economy is built on innovation, and UCSB is at the forefront of a lot of that. So yes, this was an unprecedented challenge for us as a nation and a community. But somebody at UCSB right now has a great idea that they're incubating, and I'm confident that in the next few months it's going to start to take hold, and who knows where that goes. So I'm really excited about the future and what this means, and I'm a little bit apprehensive about it for our business model, but it's a cool time to be here, and I think UCSB will be leading the way on a lot of that, and NewsHawk and other businesses in Santa Barbara are going to be the beneficiaries of that work.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, Bill. Kristen and Chris, any thoughts, any things to add?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I hope we take with us. And there's a lot of things that I see in a bright future because of the negative results that happen, things that I think we'll learn to do differently. And I think I have to be the one who sticks up for manufacturing and says that while I've praised that a lot of manufacturers in Goleta were able to stay open, but they had to put tape on the ground and 6 feet apart, we need to get them back to normal. And I wonder if this isn't a wake-up call for our planning purposes to plan for a little more industrial space to be allocated in our beautiful paradise here on the coast, but to be able to do R&D and manufacturing for these great ideas that Bill is talking about that do often come out of UCSB. I think we take them for granted, and I'd like to see a little more care and feeding of that industry. I also agree with Bill's comments about the use of Zoom and being able and webinar, GoToMeeting, and being able to meet. I hope that leads to more of a regionalism. I can tell you that from the Chamber's perspective, I already described us gathering the CEOs from the whole county. We are now working much more closely together, and we have plans any minute now to have a similar relationship with San Luis Obispo County and Ventura County. So would we have, agreed to a tri-county alliance of chambers of commerce if we had to drive there? Maybe not. So with the confidence now that we can connect with each other, I think that it's more than just the Tri-County Alliance that I'm referring to. It's a whole human perspective on regionalism and connecting to our neighbors, going up to a little higher level of understanding how we all live here together that I hope for the future. And I have another one. We have now seen that government can move fast and they can respond. And so I believe, my manifesto is that we move forward in a way that connects business and government a little more quickly, and they're going to have to keep up the good work in the future. There's a few, we used to call them shovel-ready projects, but there's a few things like the opening of State Street. I could name like 3 other ideas like that we've talked about for years. Maybe it's time we go forth and do those things.
Thank you, Kristen. Chris, do you have something to add on that?
Maybe a little. I think specific to restaurants, I think, actually, I know that a lot of people got introduced to delivery more so than all walks, all ages got more used to delivery. So I think moving forward, though hamburgers, travel okay, not great, I think we'll still see delivery be a big part of our future more than it was before. I think we may see an enhanced attention to sanitary and cleaning procedures, which is not a bad thing. All restaurants strive for it, COVID or not. So I think we could see that. And there'll be some shifts in the market. You hear about ghost kitchens and cloud kitchens. And so I think that maybe some new businesses will be kind of pop up a little bit more because of this situation. There'll be some tentativeness to from restaurateurs to invest very large amounts of money in large build outs. So I think there's going to be a hesitation to do some of that until we feel very, very safe about these types of situations. So there'll be some shifts, not major, but probably some things that are possibly for the better. So it's good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's not the hamburgers that don't travel well, it's the fries.
The fries, I know, and you got to figure out vented boxes and what can you do to make it better. So yes, there'll be some inventions in the containers and how they travel, so we can keep them a little better for you.
Thank you. Thank you for those great questions, and thanks for those stimulating responses. This is what we like to do in our interdisciplinary centers at UCSB. This is what we like to do at the campus at UCSB. This webinar series has had demographers, psychologists, engineers, computer scientists, statisticians, and now business owners, community leaders, and journalists, and all of them contribute to our knowledge. All of them help us flesh out the big picture, help us discover the existing mysteries and the questions we need to ask going forward. I'd like to spend just another second. I'm going to share the URL. This is coming up in the chat window for those of you in the audience. If you didn't see our poll at the beginning of the session today, this is the URL leading to the webinar series survey, and we would appreciate your responses to that. This also has some open-ended questions that ask for your comments, and that was not available in our poll. If you have a moment to answer those questions at least, we would be very grateful for that. And finally, we don't often have time at the end, but today we do. There's 3 people I'd like to mention who you have not seen, but who have kept the series running as well as it has run. Tim Robinson is a worker in the network science program. He is an integral operator in our data science program, and he has become a trusted colleague and friend as we've kept this series going. He helps write the flyers. He keeps us on track. He keeps us sane when there's last-minute changes. Erin Valenzuela and Lexi Wang, I'm pleased to introduce to you. They are the web team that has kept the web page fresh, made corrections, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a day, and sometimes more than that. And they've helped kept you informed and keep us on balance. These 2 are the media managers in the Center for Information Technology and Society. And this series would not have been as informative as it has been due to their extraordinary efforts the whole time. So we want to thank them. We want to thank you for joining us. Subscribe to our email list to be sure to get an announcement for forthcoming seminars. And we wish you all well. Stay safe and good. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.